Hello, dear friend. I'm James Lioncourts, and if this is your first time here, welcome to a space where real stories bring comfort, courage, and healing. We share true accounts of people who've walked through rejection, grief, loss, and came out stronger on the other side. So grab a warm drink, settle in, and let's begin. Linda always believed in showing up. Whether someone needed a ride to the airport or just a warm meal after a long week, Linda was the one who showed up. But more than anything, she showed up. For her son, Ethan was her whole world. She'd raised him as a single mother after her husband passed unexpectedly when Ethan was just 5. She worked 2 jobs, went without new shoes for years, just to make sure he never missed a school trip or birthday gift. And even now, with her graying hair and quiet evenings alone, Linda still made him her priority. Every Christmas, they had a tradition. She'd bake his favorite cranberry cake. They'd watch that old claymation Rudolph movie. And he'd tease her about using too much ribbon on his gifts. But this year, things felt off. Thanksgiving had passed with only a short, "busy this year, Mom" text. No plans, no details, no warmth. Still, Linda had hope. That was just who she was. So on Christmas Eve morning, she put on the sweater Ethan had given her. Years ago, a soft red wool one with tiny snowflakes on the sleeves. She baked the cake, packed it carefully, and added the embroidered napkins she'd made by hand when he was a child. She wrapped up the gifts she'd chosen months ago. Thoughtful, practical things. A book on leadership, a scarf in his favorite shade of navy, and a leather-bound journal with his initials. And with her heart full, she drove across town. She even hummed along with the carol playing softly on the radio. When she arrived at Ethan's house, she noticed the driveway was full. That gave her hope. Maybe the family was all inside, waiting to surprise her. She walked up the path, cold air making her eyes water, not just from the wind. She knocked on the door and waited. She could hear laughter inside, clinking glasses. Someone turned up the music. She knocked again. Then the door cracked open, just a little. It was Ethan, but the look on his face wasn't joy. It was shock and discomfort. "Mom, I didn't think you'd come," he said. And before she could respond, he shut the door. Just like that, Linda stood there, holding a cake, gifts, and every ounce of her heart in her hands. For a moment, the world went still. It was like the snow had frozen time itself. Then, she did something unexpected. She walked back to the car, sat down, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Lord, if they don't have room for me at their table, let me find someone who does." Because when one door closes, sometimes it's not rejection, it's redirection. And what happened next would change Linda's Christmas forever. ***, I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the guest bed in the cheap motel I had found nearby, still wearing the scarf he gave me years ago for Christmas. Kept replaying the sound of the door slamming in my face. The way he didn't even hesitate. The hollowness in his eyes. It was a kind of pain that didn't scream. It just settled into your bones. I thought I had prepared myself for this, that I had read all the articles, done the praying, braced my heart. But nothing can prepare a mother for that moment when her child makes it clear that she's not welcome. I watched the morning light crawl through the curtains, the dust in the air dancing like memories I didn't want to face. There were so many things I could have said. I could have demanded answers, begged to be heard, reminded him of the birthday, cakes, the sick nights, the lullabies. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe fear, or maybe just exhaustion. That morning, I picked up my phone, and instead of calling him again, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called his father, not because I missed him, but because I needed to remember the parts of my life that still made sense. The line rang twice, before I heard his voice older, slower, surprised. "Margaret?" He said, "Dot, it wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either, Dot. It was real." I told him I was in town. Told him what had happened. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Do you want to come for coffee?" And for the first time, in what felt like forever, someone wanted to open a door for me. The drive to my ex-husband's house was quiet. Not awkward, just quiet. The kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable, but heavy, like two people carrying. A memory too big to speak about out loud. When I pulled into his driveway, I noticed the same old oak tree was still there. Taller now, wiser, just like us, maybe. He opened the door himself. No maid, no second wife floating around with polite half-smiles. Just him, a man with more gray in his beard than I remembered, and more kindness in his eyes. "Come in," he said. "Coffee's still hot." I followed him inside, half expecting to feel out of place. But strangely, I didn't. Everything smelled the same. Cedarwood and thyme. We sat across from each other at the small round table we once picked out together. He didn't ask about our son at first. He didn't need to. He just waited. And when I finally spoke, I didn't cry. I told him about the door, about the look on our son's face, about how lost I felt afterward, wandering a city that once held so much joy for me. He didn't interrupt. Just let me talk. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Maybe he's not ready, but that doesn't mean you have to stop showing up." I blinked. I hadn't expected wisdom. Not from him. Not after all the years of distance and silence. But here it was, served with lukewarm coffee and a slice of truth. "I didn't come here to make him feel guilty," I said. "I just wanted him to know I'm still here. That no matter how much time passes, I'll always be here." He nodded slowly. "And you did the right thing." And for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a loosening of the knot in my chest. A reminder that I wasn't as alone as I thought. Sometimes, life surprises you with the people who show up when you least expect. And sometimes, it's the ones you thought you'd left behind who offer the first steps back home. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had to, not because of noise or a restless night, but because something in me had shifted. Something subtle, like a thread pulling at my soul, saying, "Get up, keep going." I sat by the small guest room window, sipping tea instead of coffee this time, letting the warmth fill the hollow parts of me. My mind drifted back to years ago school recitals. Birthday cakes, handmade cards with crayons, and crooked hearts. Where did all that go? How did we go from, "I love you, Mom," to "I didn't think you'd want to come"? That sentence had carved a space in my chest. A sentence that told me he no longer believed I wanted to be part of his life. Or maybe he never believed it in the first place. I thought about calling him again, not just to say good morning. Just to say anything. But IDN single quotes T. Instead, I picked up a pen and started to write. Not a letter of guilt. Not a list of reasons why I should have been invited. Just a simple note. "I'm proud of you. I hope today brings you something to smile about." I folded it, sealed it, and placed it in my bag. Later that afternoon, I asked my ex-husband to drop me off nearby my son's work. I waited across the street, watching from a distance. Not stalking, just watching. And there he was. My son, laughing with a coworker, hands in his pockets. Same walk, same smirk. He looked happy, and that both hurt and healed me at once. I crossed the street, walked past him without stopping, and slipped the note under the windshield wiper of his car. He didn't see me, and that was okay, because sometimes love doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just has to show up, and that's exactly what I was doing, showing up, quietly, softly, still loving him in the background, hoping one day he'd look up and finally see it. The next day I stayed in, not out of sadness, but out of reflection. I needed stillness. I needed silence. Not the kind that echoes with pain, but the kind that whispers truth if you sit with it long enough. I paced the guest room, the same one I had stood in 2 nights earlier, my hand on the doorframe after he closed that door in my face. This time, the memory didn't sting as much. I was beginning to understand. Something. It wasn't just about what he did. It was about the weight he carried. The pressures of being a husband, a father, a provider. Maybe I had placed too many expectations on him to be my son instead of seeing him as a man with his own life. That thought humbled me. I spent the afternoon writing in a small notebook. I had brought along the one with yellowing pages and a leather string to keep it shut. It had been a gift from him, his handwriting still etched inside the cover. To Mom, who always listens. Tears welled up. I used to listen, but lately, I think I'd only been hearing my own hurt. So I wrote pages and pages, not for him to read, but for me to understand. What did I truly want from him? I didn't want an apology. I didn't want grand gestures or some perfect son. I just wanted a bridge back, a space where I could stand nearby, even if quietly. A chance to be near enough to support him, to cheer him on, to love him, in whatever way he'd let me. That night, I didn't cry. I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I realized that love isn't about being included. Sometimes, love is simply the decision to stay kind even when you're shut out. And that was something I still had the power to do. Asterisk, asterisk. The sun peeked through the blinds the next morning. It was quiet again. But this time, not cold, just still. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and stepped into the kitchen. No one else was awake. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I made coffee, the old-fashioned way, on the stove with a kettle and everything. That smell, that warmth, it took me back to when he was 5 and used to climb up on the counter, asking me to pour just a little coffee in his milk. I never did, but he always asked. Funny the things you remember when you're trying not to fall apart. I poured 2 cups anyway, one for me, one I left sitting there. Hope is a stubborn thing. Later that morning, the door creaked. My daughter-in-law peeked in. "Hi, Helen. Do you want to come with us to the park later? I'm taking the kids." I hesitated. I could have said no. I could have retreated again, but something about her eyes, warm, maybe apologetic, moved me. "Yes," I said simply. "I'd love that." We didn't speak much on the drive. The kids sang songs in the back seat. I watched the trees fly by, golden leaves falling like slow confetti from heaven. At the park, I helped spread a blanket on the grass. My grandkids ran off to chase squirrels, and for a moment, I sat there alone. Then she sat beside me. No words. Just silence. Not the sharp kind, the soft, healing kind. She reached into the picnic basket and handed me a sandwich. Ham and cheese. I'm vegetarian now, but I took it. Because sometimes you accept peace however it comes. And for the first time in days, I laughed. Quietly. But it was a laugh, a real one. Asterisk, asterisk. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I stood at the kitchen window, watching the last rays stretch across the garden. I had been there for 3 days, 3 days of quiet, 3 days of waiting. Not for apologies, not even for explanations. Just a moment, one honest moment where someone would look me in the eye and say, "You still matter." But none had come. I heard laughter in the other room. My son and his children, bundled up in blankets, watching some silly holiday movie. I closed my eyes and smiled. Bitter and sweet. I was here, but not really with them. Still, I had shown up. Still, I had stayed. That had to count for something. I stepped outside for air. The cold nipped at my skin, but I welcomed it. It felt real. Grounding. Down the street, a neighbor was stringing Christmas lights across their porch. The glow reflected off the snow like stars resting on earth. Suddenly, I remembered something from years ago. A night not unlike this. I had just put my son to bed after a long December day. He must have been 6, maybe 7. I turned off the lights. But then his voice from the dark. "Mom, will you always come when I need you?" I had answered without hesitation. "Even before you call me, I'll be there." And I had meant it. I still meant it. Even now. Even when he had shut the door. Even when he hadn't said thank you. Love doesn't expire when it's unspoken. It just waits. Like breath on a window, waiting for someone to see it before it fades. I exhaled into the night air. And whispered to the stars, "I'm still here, son." Asterisk. The next morning, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, like a grand gesture or tearful apology. No music played. No camera zoomed in. It was just quiet. And warm. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, flipping through an old cookbook that had belonged to my mother, and then his voice. "Hey, Mom. Do you still make that cinnamon bread?" I looked up. My son stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes unsure. That one sentence, it cracked something open. "Yes," I said softly, "I do. I even brought the ingredients." He nodded. "Think you could show Emma? She's been wanting to learn." Emma, his daughter. My granddaughter. Of course, I followed him into the kitchen. Emma was already there, apron too big, smile even bigger. Ran up and hugged me like she'd been waiting all her life for that moment. And maybe she had. As we kneaded the dough, my hands guiding hers. The flour dusted everything like fresh snow. We laughed when she spilled the milk. I didn't even flinch. Some things are more important than a clean floor. I looked over at my son. He was watching us. And for the first time in years, really seeing me. His eyes met mine, soft, guilty, grateful, and I saw it. Not an apology, but a beginning, a doorway reopening, one he had once slammed shut. Didn't need an explanation anymore. I didn't need the why. I had something better. Chance to show love without needing anything in return. Because that's what being a mother means. Sometimes we love loudly. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes through cinnamon bread and warm hands guiding small ones. And sometimes when they're finally ready to let us in again, we just smile and walk through the door like we never left. Asterisk. The next few days unfolded like a sunrise, slow and steady, each moment casting new light. I didn't expect everything to be perfect. There were still long silences, still shadows behind my son's eyes. But the tension? It had softened. Emma asked me to braid her hair before bedtime. I hadn't done that in years, not since my son was small, and I used to sing him lullabies while combing his. I didn't cry, not then, but later, lying on the couch with an extra pillow and an old quilt from the closet, I let a few tears roll quietly, tears of gratitude, of grief too, but mostly peace, because healing never arrives like thunder. It slips in quietly, dressed in small kindness. Like a warm mug left by your bedside, like your son asking if you slept okay, like Emma whispering, "Grandma, will you stay forever?" That one? That one broke me open and sewed me back together. I said, "I'll stay as long as I'm welcome." And my son, drying dishes behind us, said softly, "Then stay a while, Mom." That Mom, not Mother. Not Ma'am. Not a formality, just Mom. Like we had never lost a single day, but we had many, and now we were quietly reclaiming them. Not with apologies, but with pancakes, with bedtime stories, with dishes, washed side by side. That's how families rebuild. Not with grand speeches, but with choosing, day after day, to show up again. And there I was back in my son's life, not because he had suddenly become someone new, but because he had let me in to love the person he already was, even the broken parts, especially those. Asterisk, asterisk, it was Sunday morning. Sun peeked through the curtains, like it knew something was about to shift. Emma and I were in the kitchen making cinnamon rolls from scratchwell, from the can. But we added love, which counts double. I was teaching her how to press the dough. Gently, not squish it, she said. I like when you're here. Daddy smiles more. That stopped me mid-roll, not in a dramatic way, just enough to breathe a little deeper. I wanted to say something wise, something unforgettable. Instead, I whispered, me too. Later that day, my son asked if I could stay. One more week. Just one more. He said Emma would like it, but I knew it wasn't just for her. I knew it in the way he made coffee, the way I liked and how he put an extra blanket on the couch without asking. He was still learning how to say, I'm sorry, but I could see it between every sentence, every glance. That's the funny thing about healing. Sometimes the apology shows up before the words. That night, while Emma was brushing her teeth, I found myself standing in front of the hallway mirror, looking at a woman I barely recognized. Not older, not worn out, but softer, wiser, more rooted in grace than I'd ever been. I had come expecting rejection. I had gotten redemption. And though we still didn't talk about the day he shut the door in my face, we were writing new chapters now. Ones with open doors, warm kitchens, and cinnamon sugar hope. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because of the noise, but because of the silence. A good kind of silence, the kind that wraps around you like a soft scarf. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the hum of life down the hall. Emma's giggles. My son's deep voice reading from one of her storybooks. The kind of moment you don't interrupt, just savor. I made coffee and stood at the window. The neighbor's tree had started to bloom. And so had something in me. Healing doesn't shout. It whispers. Later that afternoon, my son came into the kitchen, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense like they were carrying the last 20 years. I was angry for a long time. He said, not looking at me, just staring at the floor like the truth was written in the tiles. I blamed you for things that weren't your fault. My hands froze on the coffee mug. Not from surprise, but because I'd waited so long to hear that. I didn't know how to say it before. He added, I'm sorry, Mom. 3 words, 3 decades. It all unraveled at once. I walked over and touched his arm, just lightly. No lecture, no speech. Just grace. I know, I said, and I never stopped loving you. That's the thing about motherhood. Even when your heart breaks, it keeps beating in the direction of your child. He nodded, still not meeting my eyes, but his shoulders softened, like he'd finally put down the weight. That evening, we had dinner as a family, real dinner. No takeout boxes. Just real food, real conversation, and real healing. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a visitor in my son's life. I felt home. Asterisk, asterisk. The next morning felt different. Lighter. I woke, but before everyone else, and wandered into the kitchen. There, on the fridge, was a crooked drawing from Emma. It said, Grandma's house is happy. The colors were wild, the letters uneven, but it was perfect. That little piece of paper told a whole story. A story of forgiveness, of finding each other again, of healing. Later that day, my son asked if we could go for a walk. Just the two of us. It had been years since we'd done something so simple. We walked around the neighborhood in silence for a while before he spoke. You? No, he said. I didn't expect this to happen. I looked at him, a little confused. This? He continued. Us talking, laughing, being normal. I smiled gently. Sometimes normal takes a long journey. He chuckled. Yeah, a long, stubborn one. Then he turned to me and asked, do you want to come back for Christmas next year? I stopped, not because I was surprised, but because it was the first time he invited me. Guilt. Without pity. Without obligation. Just because he wanted me there. I nodded slowly. I'd love that. He smiled. A real smile, not the polite one. The kind that reaches the eyes and says, we're okay now. We walked back in silence, but it wasn't empty. It was full of every word we didn't have to say anymore. That night, before bed, I sat by the window again. The stars looked different. Or maybe I did. Sometimes you knock on a door expecting rejection and get redemption instead. Sometimes the healing you crave doesn't come in the form of an apology, but in an invitation to come back. And this time, I wasn't just at the door. I was inside. Sometimes life brings us to a door that doesn't open. We knock, we wait, we hope. But the silence on the other side makes us question our worth. And in that quiet space, it's easy to believe the lie that we're not wanted anymore. But what Helen's story taught us is this: love doesn't retire. Motherhood doesn't expire. And a closed door isn't always locked. You see, pain can be blinding. Pride can be loud. And hurt people? They don't always know how to say, I need you. But healing begins not with the other person's apology. It begins with our choice to show up with grace. Helen didn't demand a speech. She didn't wait for a grand gesture. She showed up with something small but powerful. Faith. Faith that love could still grow. Faith that her story wasn't over. Faith that kindness, when given without conditions, can melt even the coldest hearts. And maybe, just maybe, you're the Helen in someone's life. Or maybe someone's been standing outside your door. Whatever side of the story you're on, let this be your invitation to forgive, to reach out, to remember that no relationship is too far gone when love takes the first step. We don't always get do-overs in life, but we can write new chapters. Thank you for staying with us. May this story remind you, you are never too old to be loved, never too far to come home, and never too late to try again. And maybe. That's the whole point. Life isn't always about the big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it's about the quiet return, the gentle knock, the unexpected welcome. Maybe you've been standing outside a door too, waiting, hoping, hurting. But this story reminds us, sometimes healing begins when we stop waiting to be invited and gently choose to show up. Because broken things can be mended, wounds can become wisdom, and families, no matter how far apart they've grown, can find their way home again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know how much one story can heal. Leave us a comment below. Tell us what part of this journey spoke to you. We read every word, and your story matters too. And hey, if you love stories like this, subscribe to our channel. We share emotional, powerful journeys of ordinary people with extraordinary courage. Give us a like to let the algorithm know this story mattered. And remember, you're never too far to come home. Until next time, friends, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in second chances. Asterisk, asterisk.